Good morning, genealogy friends. I am so late this morning, and I'm sorry for those of you who are really counting on that 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time for me to show up. I was all set to do the live, and then I realized I pulled out one of the things that I wanted to show you today was in a box, and I realized at the last second that I had pulled out the wrong box, and then I had to go find the right box. Anyway, I am here now. I just wanted to touch on something really briefly. I'm not going to do more photography history today. I'll do that next week just to give people kind of a break if you're not interested in photos. But I do feel like I got a good response from that little, well, it wasn't little, that half-hour lesson on the history of photography in the 19th century. And sorry, one of my kids came in. And I'm glad that you found that interesting because I am sort of a photography nerd and I love that kind of stuff. What I wanted to talk about today has to do with photography, but it has to do with the photos themselves. I talk a lot about taking photos, scanning them, and then putting them away in an archival fashion and not touching them. The question is, do you have to dismantle photo albums? Do you have to pull them apart in order to store your things correctly? At what point do you decide that staying in a photo album is worse for the photo than being removed? So I wanted to show 3 different examples. All of these are albums where the photos are still in, but we're going to talk about the damage and the benefits of keeping them the way they are. Okay, so the first one I wanted to show you is this one that's in a box. This is the box that I couldn't find this morning, but I wanted to bring it out. It's the oldest photo album I have. I have it in a box in a Ziploc. This is how I'm keeping this safe. And I keep it in an indoor closet. This scrapbook belonged to my great-grandmother. Let me pull this off. So my great-grandmother grew up in a Chinese orphanage. Well, she spent half of her childhood in a Chinese orphanage in San Francisco called Cameron House. Those of you who are from the Bay Area might be familiar. And she kept this scrapbook. We're going to talk about the how and why. Good morning, Pam. The how and why a orphan had the means to keep a scrapbook. But this is my great-grandmother in her adolescence sitting on one of the windows at the orphanage. And yes, the windows were barred. That was mostly for safety to keep people out. The orphanage also was a rescue house for women who were escaping Chinese prostitution, sometimes escaping it involuntarily, and there was a lot of risk. Anyway, the photo album is as close to original condition as I can keep it. You can see some of the photos are missing. I am not the one that took those out. But let me find some of them are more damaged as we get in. Here's a good picture. The glue, the paper, and the fact that the photos are, now more than 100 years old, the photos are being damaged. They're fading. So the question is, okay, I've got these photos of this orphanage that's relatively important to San Francisco history. And the photos, I 100% will tell you, are being ruined by being in this photo album. So why am I not taking these out and slipping these into plastic archival sleeves like I told you guys to do last week? Well, the answer is this album, as an album, has more historical value than as a random collection of photographs because there are notations in here. This is a photo of Choi Young. This is a photo of Hattie King. I don't know these people. I am trying to figure out how to share these photos in a way that I can reconnect with their families. I'm not sure how many photo albums from this orphanage survive. I don't know if Donaldina Cameron, the woman who ran the orphanage, kept things like this. But these together tell more of a story than these photos would if I pulled them out and stacked them up. If you have photo albums like this that have notations, or if you have photo albums like this, I don't know where that came from, where your ancestor actually glued them in, even the placement of photos might be able to tell you something about the story. So this is one of those instances where I would tell you, make sure that you scan the full pages in order before you think about removing the photos. And then I would caution you to maybe not remove the photos prematurely if what you're looking at is just historical in fact. I am not saying that I'm going to leave this album in this shape forever. Some of these photos of my great-grandmother I want to make sure that I preserve. But, a lot of these little notations, it's just funny. Like here she wrote the word dreaming. This is the kind of stuff that you write in a photo album when you're 14 years old. I love the idea of my orphaned 14-year-old grandmother. I guess I grew up with this picture of her having this really sad childhood in this orphanage. And instead I have this photo album that shows that, yeah, she's in an orphanage, but she obviously had lots of friends. They had inside jokes and nicknames. This is a picture of her with one of the other orphans on her lap. If you're curious, by the way, yes, my great-grandmother was Caucasian. She, however, did not speak English when she was a child, and that's why she was in a Chinese orphanage, which is why all of the other people in these photos are Chinese. Anyway, happy times, cheers, things like that. This is the, hi. You're being very unprofessional. Okay. So that's one example of leaving a photo album as is. Okay. Here is another example of leaving a photo album as is. This is my husband, who, thank heavens, doesn't watch these because he'd be horrified that I'm showing his 3rd grade photo. My mother-in-law made this for my husband when he was growing up, and she gave it to me when we got married. I scanned it as is, and then I'm leaving it alone. Obviously, 100 years from now, will the photos do better if I remove them from the scrapbook paper? Sure, but this paper is going to be less damaging than that paper was. A lot of this paper probably, is meant for scrapbooks. She's got them in plastic sleeves, and the little notations, the things that she did, they tell a lot about the story, but it also says huge things about my mother-in-law and her relationship with her son. I would not ever take this apart to save the photos. So if you have, I was a huge scrapbooker from 1995 to about 2005. If you are also part of that bandwagon and you have this kind of stuff put together, again, that's a moment and a mood captured in amber. I'd leave it alone. Unless you've done terrible scrapbooky things to your cabinet cards, in which case you might want to go save them. Okay, last but not least, I think a lot of us have these. So this is also my husband's. I haven't taken it apart yet. This is the infamous sticky back album with the, plastic cover. This is my son's first photo album. These are photos that he put in himself. A lot of them he took on vacation. Why have I not rescued these photos? Well, for one, these photos aren't that old. My husband and I are children of the 80s, so these are not exactly archival level yet. And again, the layout, this is how he thought the photos needed to go in when he was 7 or 8. It's cute in its simplicity. Seriously? Sorry, my cat's playing with a box behind me. However, am I going to keep these photos in here forever? No, because sticky back albums are terrible. Sticky back albums have a lot of acid in them. They are prone to melting and peeling and ripping your photos and all sorts of things. I have scanned this. I think this photo album has maybe 10 years tops that I'm willing to let it continue being a sticky back album in my house. And then I'm taking it apart because even though it's cute that my husband put them in this way, he doesn't have little notations. There isn't a whole lot of artistic effort in how he put things in. It's really just how a 7-year-old boy would put photos into an album. So this is one of those things where I'm glad that I scanned it the way it is. I will take photos of the album itself, but this is not something that I need to keep in exact condition 100 years from now at the expense of the photos. These photos are going to be rescued at some point. Anyway, that is my personal take. I will say, okay, let me pull out one more just because it's sitting right here because we didn't talk about these. See, I have photo albums all over, but hi, could you be dustier? This is another one that a lot of us have. So you might have some of these. This is the more common way to do photos over the last 15 years. This photo album is from when I studied the first time around in London, and I haven't taken it out because I have a lot of these notations. Now, if you watched my live that I did about the page protectors, I talked about how you want to make sure that if you have these photo albums that they are welded and not glued. This is a welded photo album. The little tabs here, they're melted together. There's no adhesive here. If this photo album had a line of adhesive, I would be taking these photos out, probably even with the notations there, and just transferring them, onto the photo or something else. Because when there's glue here, there's a chance that the glue will separate and the photos will fall as they sit on the shelf, and then you've got a line of glue that's going to be on your photo. But most of the photo albums, honestly, after 2000 should have this welding instead of having the glue line. And I mean, I don't take this one out a ton, but the welding's actually holding really well on this one, so I'm leaving this alone because it has all of my notations from the trip. I don't actually, maybe I've got one. This one's from France. Sorry, you guys are just getting a tour of my bookcase. Thought maybe the French might. Nope, that's also welded. This one, oh, this is my husband's. This is older. Oh, these are also welded. Anyway, it would be worth checking. I don't have it makes sense actually now that I think about it that I don't have one that has glue in it because I would have rescued the photos. So, something to think about when you're thinking about your albums. I just wanted to let you know that I'm not always an advocate for just ripping your photo albums up. I feel like sometimes that can come across when I talk about how I like to scan photos and put them away and only touch them digitally. I do keep photo albums in my house, obviously, and some albums, like this one, are, I think, more precious as albums than they would be as a stack of perfectly archived photos and photo sleeves. So I hope this was helpful, and I will be back again tomorrow.